In this video, Robert Reich talks about why Trump won. And, you know, I have some friends that dislike Robert Reich, but it's hard for me to find stuff to disagree with him in this video, which is why I'm sharing it. Take a listen.
What is the lesson from the 2024 election? I'm hearing a lot of theories, and most of them are wrong.
Well, we need to take stock of why we're being held hostage to the far left.
It's certainly not that Democrats need to move to the right. Oh, please. That's both morally wrong and bad politics. And it's not that Harris ran a bad campaign. I think she ran a good one, given that she only had 3 months to do it in. And while, yes, misogyny and racism absolutely played a role, I don't believe they were the biggest factors either. Here's the real lesson. A top issue for most Americans was the economy. Well, the economy has improved over the last 4 years. According to standard economic measures, most Americans without college degrees, that's the majority, have not felt it. These Americans overwhelmingly voted for Trump. In fact, most Americans without college degrees have not felt much economic improvement for 4 decades, and their jobs have become less secure. Adjusted for inflation, the typical income of the bottom 90% is stuck nearly where it was in the early 1990s, even though the economy is more than twice as large. Most of the gains have gone to the top, leaving many Americans frustrated and angry. Trump gave voice to that anger. Harris did not. The real lesson of 2024 is that Democrats must not just give voice to the anger, but also explain how record inequality has corrupted our system and commit to limiting the political power of big corporations and the super rich. The basic bargain used to be that if you worked hard and played by the rules, you'd do better, and your children would do even better than you. But over the past few decades, that bargain has become a sham. The middle class has shrunk. Why? While Republicans steadily cut taxes on the rich, allowing inequality to skyrocket, many Democrats abandoned the working class. Democrats and Republicans alike embraced free trade deals that hurt American workers. They deregulated finance and allowed Wall Street to become a high-stakes gambling casino. Both parties let big corporations gain enough market power to keep prices and profit margins high. They let corporations bust unions and slash payrolls. They bailed out Wall Street when its gambling addiction threatened to blow up the entire economy, but never bailed out homeowners who lost everything. They welcomed big money into their campaigns and delivered quid pro quos that rigged the market in favor of big corporations and the wealthy. Now, Joe Biden redirected the Democratic Party back toward its working class roots with vigorous antitrust enforcement, stronger enforcement of labor laws, and major investments in manufacturing, infrastructure, semiconductors, and clean energy. But we're only just beginning to reap the benefits of those policies. And now, many are likely to be reversed. The Republican Party says it's on the side of working people, but its policies have and will hurt workers even more. Trump's tariffs will drive up prices. His expected retreat from antitrust enforcement will allow giant corporations to get even bigger and drive up prices even higher. Republicans will extend and expand Trump's tax cuts for the rich. This will blow up the national debt and give them an excuse to cut Social Security and Medicare. Democrats must stand firm against all of this. They should demand paid family leave, Medicare for all, free public higher education, stronger unions, higher taxes on the rich, and the biggest boom in home construction since World War II. They should also demand that corporations share their profits with their workers. They should call for limits on CEO pay, eliminate stock buybacks, which used to be illegal, and reject corporate welfare. Democrats need to tell Americans why their pay has been lousy for decades and their jobs less secure, and who is to blame. It's not because of immigrants, the LGBTQ community, people of color, the deep state, or any other MAGA scapegoat. It's because of the power of large corporations and the rich to rig the market and siphon off most of the economy's gains. The Democratic Party should use this inflection point to become an anti-establishment party, ready to shake up the system on behalf of the vast majority of Americans. This is, and must be, the lesson of the 2024 election.
You know what I love about that is he's so succinct in a conversational way about making all of those points that you hear piecemeal in a variety of other places, but it lines right up with what Bernie Sanders is saying. You know, and the tricky part of this is how entrenched money and lobbies and then the big corporate influence has already become in our politics, right? I mean, this is not just a Republican problem, although they're the ones who brazenly will cut taxes for the rich and deregulate and everything that he just said. But, Democrats are guilty of it too. And the idea of the Democratic Party becoming this sort of new, exciting, anti-establishment party is amazing. But I think we need a whole new generation of people to get into politics. And that has started to happen. But it's hard for me to imagine the Nancy Pelosi's and the geriatric establishment changing course even after a defeat this resounding. But, I would like to know what you think in the comments. I mean, this video covers a lot of material. But for me, the core of it, like with my Bernie videos, comes down to money in politics, Citizens United. We have to figure out a way to dial that back, because right now it's so outbalanced to the super rich. The rest of us don't feel like, I guess I speak for the rest of us, I don't feel like we have a chance. And if you want other perspectives on this, why don't we take a listen to a little bit of the blame game that we're hearing on the media? This is from Some More News. It's funny stuff. You should check it out.
See, a lot of people just aren't going to accept the fact that Biden and Harris and the establishment Democrats f***ed the dog on this one, at least not for a while. And so, naturally, we've already been flooded with some of the most unhinged takes coming from liberals trying to invent a narrative where they are actually blameless. So, who is actually to blame then? Let's speak some hard truths.
I'm going to speak some hard truths to my friends in the Democratic Party. This is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Kamala Harris's fault. It's not Barack Obama's fault. It is the fault of the Democratic Party in not knowing how to communicate effectively to voters.
Okay, that's Democratic strategist Julie Roginski. And, well, she's right that the Democratic Party can't communicate to voters. Pretty weird that she apparently doesn't consider Biden or Harris or Obama part of that party and therefore blameless, but let's hear her out.
For a number of reasons, we don't know how to speak to voters. When we address Latino, and language has meaning. When we address Latino voters as Latinx, for instance, because that's the politically correct thing to do. It makes them think that we don't even live on the same planet as they do.
What? So it wasn't Joe Biden's fault. It wasn't Kamala Harris's fault. It was the people who say Latinx's fault. Is there any polling data that shows this? Or are you perhaps just being weird and mad? See, in these convulsing throes of denial, we're seeing a lot of masks slip right off as seemingly left-leaning people just full-on blame minorities for some mysterious reason. But I guess that saying, scratch a liberal and he explodes like a water balloon full of tiny Hitlers. Matt Iglesias, Maureen Dowd, Joe Scarborough, Julie Roginski. They have nearly pissed themselves in their excitement to throw trans people and the wokes under the bus. Even before the election, they were doing this.
Right. The trans ad has had impact.
And you're hearing that from the canvas.
Yes.
And they've run that. We talked about this earlier. They've run that 30,000 times during football games. It's having an impact. The campaign is blind to it. They just are blind to it.
So the broad theory here seems to be that No, it wasn't the fact that Democrats tried to court Republicans and run on moderate and meek policy, but rather that they overly focused on special interest groups like trans people and were too PC, and that came off as elitist to the common working class, which is weird because they didn't actually do that. Like, factually speaking, Harris and the Democrats didn't do that. Harris was actually really dodgy about trans rights. So you can't just pretend a thing happened. Because I agree that the Democrats have lost all messaging for the working class. Whew, boy. Oh boy. Do I agree? They have. But to finish that sentence with, and it's because they're too focused on trans rights, is zooming past the actual problem. Especially since we have information about what the voters actually cared about.
Let me know what you think in the comments.